Saturday was the 25th game of the season for Duke basketball. And in the 25th game, they scored the most points that they had all season. What a beatdown that Duke basketball was able to hand to Stanford. Let's talk about it here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. So excited to have you here with us today on Monday, February 17th, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. Today, we're focused on the Duke win over Stanford. Duke scores the most points in the entire any game that they have had this season. A season high, 106 points, a 36-point victory over Stanford. We'll dive in and break it all down with our good pal Conor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated here throughout the course of today's show. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcast. Go ahead and leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Really do appreciate all the support that you give us here on Locked On Blue Devils. And also make sure that you check us out on YouTube each and every day as we continue that climb towards 3,000 subscribers on YouTube. We're getting so close and definitely excited to have you guys along for the ride. Follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils, and I'm there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. So without further ado, Conor O'Neill is here with us, who was there on hand for the Duke game as they took down Jaylen Blakes and the Stanford Cardinal by a score of 106-70. And holy cow, Conor, what an offensive display we saw from Duke. And again, their 25th game of the season. Somehow, some way, they keep having these games where they're getting better.
Yeah, it's the offensive numbers are just pretty mind-boggling. Like, they had 1.6 points per possession. Anytime you're getting that level, like that's never going to lose a game, basically, unless you just like have 5 guys that are sleeping on the defensive end. And the other team is able to shoot probably like 90% might beat you. But
right.
Just an incredible offensive display. Everything kind of clicking on all cylinders. Like Tyrese Proctor continues his heater. He's averaging now 19.4 in the last 5 games, starting with the 17-point game against UNC. I think Cooper Flagg wound up with 19 points, and it felt like he could have done more. I think John got him out of the game pretty early based on his minutes and where he's been playing. Kaman Malawach has 17 points and is 8 for 9 from the field, and you're cracking up because the one shot that he missed was a 3-pointer. And we were joking about in the media room afterward that, when Kaman takes a 3, you want it to be an opportune time. I think he took it when it was a 17-point game. So it's not like he was taking away a possession when it was a 16-13 game and competitive.
Sure.
I think he's allowed to do that. So just all kinds of offensive dominance. Defensively, I mean, that's not to cast that aside. Their offense was just so much better that's what you have to talk about. But I mean, defensively, the main thing was Maxime Reynaud had 18 points in the first half. He was 7 for 16. He finished the game 7 for 21. Yeah. And he made 1 free throw in the second half. Did the one thing that you can never do as an opposing player, which is let the crazies know that they've gotten in your head, because they were chanting, I believe it was an ex-girlfriend's name, Alexandra. And he made a free throw when they were chanting it, and he turned to the crowd and mouthed something along the lines of, you can cut that out now.
Right.
So he heard it a few more times, of course. And he was kept in check for the second half.
Yeah. And that one point in the second half was like a minute or two into it. And then, it's the last 17, 18 minutes of that second half where Stanford's top dog is held scoreless and not able to get into a rhythm. That's when Duke was really asserting their dominance. Because going back to those first 10 minutes or so of this game, it feels like they're on pace for, 80, 85 points with how productive Stanford was on the offensive end. Fortunately, that was at a point in the game for Duke where they were also kind of making shots as well. So the outcome necessarily was never in doubt, right? Like it always felt like Duke's going to win this. It's going to be fine. But maybe you thought this is going to be a closer game, a higher scoring game for both these teams. Little did we know Duke would go nuclear in the second half, and those last 10 minutes of the first half even really start to assert their defensive dominance there and make it really, really difficult for Stanford to score.
Yeah, and it's just it's kind of we're 25 games into this, and we have so much evidence of one of the things that makes Duke such an elite team is their spurt ability, because their offense is so good. They're going to make shots at a high level, and their defense is so good that they wind up putting these 8-0, 10-0, 12-0 runs together. It doesn't take them 5 minutes to do it like Virginia would have under Tony Bennett when it was really humming there for a while. Like they can do it so fast, and they put you behind the 8 ball so quickly, and they can just flip the switch on you. And Evan Maya tracks a stat called kill shots, and it's a string of at least 10 straight points scored by a team. I think if I remember my brief research correctly the other day, I think Duke has 24 kill shots this season and has only given up 6.
Wow.
Maybe 5 or 6.
Right.
It's just, yeah. They have a lot of them. They don't give them up. And it's just that's the way they play. You can obviously win a whole lot of games when that's your pedigree or recipe or whatever it is that you do in basketball games.
Without a doubt. I mean, it's big time performance here for Duke. This offense continues to get better. The defense is great. At this point, you've got these national championship aspirations for Duke. Every team or every person that's looking at the betting odds and kind of seeing how this is going to play out, you look at the analytics, Duke is expected to be one of the final teams at the end, and you almost want to hit the fast forward button to see how this plays out finally. But we've still got those 5 ACC games left in the regular season. Saturday this week, Duke's going to have that non-conference game against Illinois. You've still got the ACC tournament to go, and then the NCAA tournament. 25 games in, Conor, it finally feels like we are at that point where it's like, all right, really, come on, let's try and get to the moment where we do get to see Duke finally play in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, sorry, you cut out on me there a little bit. I'm trying to minimize all my windows all my tabs to make sure my connection stays up. No, I honestly, if I caught the drift of where we were going with that, I think it's a good thing for Duke that Louisville and Clemson keep winning, because Duke still has a 1-game lead on the ACC. It's not like they're running away with the thing and have margin for error.
And that is something that you want to try to win.
Yeah, and they have margin for error a little bit with Louisville because they have that head-to-head tiebreaker. But if Duke loses a second game and those two teams keep winning, I'll need to do research that I admittedly haven't done yet for what a 3-way tiebreaker would look like. I think it comes down to whoever has a better record against Wake Forest, which now that I say that out loud, all 3 of them have beaten Wake Forest, and Wake is going to play Duke a second time. But no, it's you want to have that aspiration of winning the ACC regular season. It's good for Duke that Clemson and Louisville keep winning games and stay on their heels. Look, I think it's also kind of important. I don't think Duke thinks this way, but I think it's kind of important that the most wins anybody has had in an ACC season when it's been a 20-game slate is 17 last year by UNC. So Duke can eclipse that if they just keep doing what they're doing, and they're going to be favored in every ACC game remaining starting tonight with Virginia. The game this weekend at Madison Square Garden is a big one because, God, I've seen some Illinois. I've just caught them on nights that the ACC doesn't have games and stuff like that. They've got such a high ceiling. They've also got such a low floor for how good their talent is. It's going to be a big-time game and a big-time atmosphere, obviously, being in the Garden. But, yeah, I get the notion to fast forward. Part of me wants to fast forward too. But another part is like, there's still some things we need to see from this team. We need to see how they stay focused when they get to the end here.
enjoy the ride for sure. Because, I mean, teams like this, years like this don't come around often. So let's just see how far this Duke basketball team can carry it out. All right, I want to talk a little bit more about the win over Stanford and get you ready for the game coming up tonight against Virginia as well. But first, we need to take a timeout here on Locked On Blue Devils. All right, Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better way to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you could stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. All the best features and everything available with FanDuel, and the NBA is the perfect place to get in on the action. We're exiting All-Star Weekend on Wednesday. The league gets back into action with all these big games. Make sure that you go check out FanDuel. Also, Duke basketball tonight, according to our friends over at FanDuel, 13.5-point favorites on the road against the Virginia Cavaliers. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, let's keep rolling. It's a big-time win for Duke. They blast Stanford on Saturday inside Cameron Indoor Stadium. Dick Vitale makes his return to Cameron Indoor, and for the second straight week on a Saturday, he's a part of the Duke basketball broadcast. That was certainly awesome to listen to and see him kind of walking around the facilities, once again, getting up into the crow's nest to be ready to call a game like that. And then the other kind of unique thing, taking sort of the basketball away from this in terms of the on-the-court product, Jaylen Blakes makes his return to Cameron Indoor. One of only two people, Connor, in this entire world that are able to say they played for both Mike Krzyzewski and John Shire while at Duke, him and Jeremy Roach being those two guys. He's got his Duke degree, and now he comes back playing in Cameron. We saw a couple of guys go up against Duke, but most of them have been on the road, like TJ Power tonight for UVA is going to be playing on the road against his former squad. What was the reception like for Jaylen Blakes as he came back to Cameron Indoor?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I hadn't thought of it going in. But I was kind of pleasantly surprised that he got cheered as much as he did. Cool. You're just, you know how routines go. We have a routine to get into press row that involves like waiting until the anthem finishes. So then usually when the visiting team is being introduced, a lot of the media is still shuffling in front of the crazies to get to our seats. And I usually just wind up tuning out and ignoring the, hey, so-and-so, you suck. And just part of it, but it's part of it that I kind of miss because I'm focused on not stepping on toes and not like pulling out my chair too far and kneecapping somebody.
Right.
But for some reason, like I listened to, hey, playing guard for Stanford is Jaylen Blakes. And it was like, and it was a legitimate cheer. Like I said, I didn't know why I didn't think of it going into the game. I guess that's why I was surprised by it and not like expecting it. And I guess I kind of got worn out like 3 weeks ago with would John Calipari get booed or cheered or whoever who cared was basically my stance on that. It was just a cool scene. I know it's good for Duke, but I hate that he didn't play better because you could kind of see him pressing and he wanted to put on a good performance and he gets held to like 12 points under his season average. There were a couple moments where like he tried to get around Tyrese Proctor and you just kind of look at it and it's like, how much do you think Tyrese is thinking to himself, this guy tried to score on me for 2 years in practice. He's not going to score on me in Cameron when he's on the other team.
Right.
But John said some great things about Jaylen being Duke family in the post game. Kyle Smith mentioned that Kyle Smith worded it that Coach K came down and visited with Jaylen. And I didn't really know how to word that around whether Coach K came down to the visiting locker room because the visiting locker room at Cameron is downstairs in like a basement.
Right.
or if it meant like he came down to the hotel on Friday night or whatever. But
right.
Coach K got to meet with him is the crux there. Just a cool moment. And I was pissed off at myself. They had Dickie V ring the cancer bell that they always have the Children's Hospital kids come out and ring at center court during media timeouts. But that was like an hour and a half before the game when you're not really thinking you have to be at the court 24, the whole time. So I was bummed that I missed that because that was a really cool scene based on photos and videos I've seen.
Basically what we're saying, some fun and exciting pomp and circumstances with this game. And then it was a 36-point beat down when the two teams actually tipped it off and it was a basketball game.
Really, the coolest things that happened on Saturday at Cameron were the things that didn't have anything to do with the game. Of course, like Cooper Flagg grabbing a one-handed rebound in traffic was really cool, and Tyrese Proctor continuing his heater was really cool. Like, I'm not diminishing those things, but they kind of take a back seat to the cool things that happened everywhere around the 40 minutes when the clock was actually ticking.
Certainly. Jaylen Blakes, for those who didn't see the box score after the fact, 28 minutes of action, 1 of 10 shooting from the floor, 0 of 4 from three-point range, just 2 points on the game, 2 rebounds and 2 assists. So to your point, probably not the return to Cameron that he wanted, but it's a Duke win. They're now 22-3 overall in the season, 14-1 in ACC play. Again, 17-3 is the record for the 20-game schedule that North Carolina set a season ago, and Duke is certainly trying to contend with that in their own right. I do want to talk about Tyrese Proctor because this man, 29 points, 9 of 13 from the floor, 5 of 8 from three-point range, another 23-point performance. Every time he shoots the basketball now, not only do we think it's going in, but you can watch his body language. And I don't know what it is. Like, Tyrese just seems like he feels every single shot is going to go in now. And there were moments when you're watching him where maybe he didn't have that sort of same swagger look or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I think it's honestly, it's just confidence. Like it plays such a large role, and it's something that we can never quantify. You can't put confidence meters into Ken Pom or Bartorvik or whatever. You just have to go out and see it and feel it. And look, you're right. Like every time he gets a kick out from a drive on Sion or Cooper, anybody, anytime that an offensive rebound gets batted around and it winds up in his hands with an open three, you just think it's going in because it has gone in for the last 3 weeks. He's got supreme confidence. That was my question to John after the game was like, has he been doing anything different? Has John seen anything different from him over the last couple of weeks? And I mean, John said the first thing out of his mouth was about his preparation. Was about how well he has been preparing for these games. And the other part is just how many ways he is able to affect a basketball game. Like it kind of cracks me up how every college basketball team seems to be in a rush to develop their point guard and then move them off the ball. We kind of saw it with Jeremy Roach, and then we saw it with Tyrese Proctor. Like Tyrese Proctor was a good point guard, and now Duke is thrilled that he's playing off the ball because Sion James is playing the point guard and Cooper plays point forward, that type of thing. But you keep those distributor skills, like you keep the play make skills. Tyrese throws lobs to Common Malawach like a point guard. So, and then obviously his defense is just. He's been an elite college defender for the better part of 3 seasons. Yeah. It really started about halfway through his freshman year that you really took notice of like guys aren't scoring on him that often. It's really hard to score on him. He's 6'5", he's disruptive. He doesn't get beat off the dribble that often. He doesn't give up straight line drives. Last year he played elite level defense, I thought, and this year it's gotten better if anything. So he's a key. I mean, you're always going to wind up saying Cooper Flagg is Duke's most important player. Like the last 2 years, how many arguments have we had to have about who Duke's most important player is, who's going to have the ball for Duke in crunch time, late in games. We don't have to have those discussions this year. Like if you want to have it, it's who's Duke's second most important player.
Right.
I think at this point it is Tyrese. Like given what he brings across the board, I think he's the guy.
Pretty awesome to see him play as well as he did, and for Duke to play as well as they did as a team as well. 106-70, every scholarship player for the Blue Devils scored in this basketball game, 5 of them in double figures. Also really loved the final bucket of the game, a Neil Begovic dunk after he played 4 years at Stanford, kind of the reverse Jaylen Blakes. Both of those guys are going to start up life with degrees from both Stanford and Duke. Which is incredibly impressive. But, yeah, everybody gets to be a part of it. We saw Caleb Foster minutes at the end there. All in all, just a really good day for Duke against Stanford.
Yeah, the Caleb Foster minutes, I mean, the most impressive part or the most encouraging part was, I can't remember if he was the one that scored it or somebody else scored it, but he had a steal in the backcourt off the inbound pass.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he was very active in those last 6 minutes, and that's what you want to see. Like, you don't want to see a guy who has obviously taken quite a role reduction based on where he started the year to now. You don't want to throw him out there in the last 6 minutes and see him just coasting.
Right.
Like, you don't want to. That's the last thing you need to see, and that's the thing that'll convince you that he's not going to be of help in the future if you ever need him in a key game. But we saw the opposite. Like, we saw him engaged. We saw him trying to make plays for others and make plays for himself. He wound up with 10 points. So that's, again, it's the last 6 minutes of a blowout game. We're not saying that he's going to be challenging to regain his starting role or anything. But it is encouraging. And that's better than what we can say for a lot of his games over the last few months.
Yeah, at least it's there. There have been moments where Caleb Foster kind of was passive or didn't look as confident. We've talked about the confidence that Proctor is displaying right now. So it was good to see Caleb Foster do a little bit of that as well in the final 6 minutes of that game. So 36-point victory for the Blue Devils. Really quick turnaround, though. They've got to get that one out of their system. They're on the road, headed up to Charlottesville to take on Virginia. We'll preview that game when we come back here in just a moment. All right, thanks so much for making Locked On Blue Devils your first listen or your first watch here today. Also, after this is over, make sure that you go and check out the Locked On ACC podcast. Alex Dono and Kenton Gibbs keep it real and bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. Find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever it is that you listen to your podcast. Remember, each and every Thursday, we bring together the Locked On ACC squad to talk about all the latest news and headlines around the conference, and we want you to be a part of those episodes with us. So make sure that you check out Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Conor O'Neill is here with us. We're getting set for Duke basketball back in action a little bit later tonight, taking on Virginia. This is the first meeting in several years that Tony Bennett is not the head coach of the Cavaliers. That's a different look. Mentioned TJ Power, a part of the team, a Duke connection there, although he's not making as big of an impact as somebody like Jaylen Blakes is making at Stanford this season. But when you see this, I mentioned it earlier, FanDuel's got Duke favored by 13.5 points. What stands out to you about this game, Connor?
I think the first thing that I would try to press upon Duke fans to know for tonight is this is not Tony Bennett's Virginia team, and that's obvious. I know that, but they score.
Right.
They're over 70 points in the last 5 games. And I didn't do as good a research as I should have to tell you like the last time that's happened, but this is
it's been a while.
This is a more offensive team than you're used to seeing. Like they actually can put some points on people. Now, granted, they've been playing defenses that are nowhere close to the elite level that Duke's defense is. So if they score 48 tonight, don't tell me how dumb I am for thinking that they are an offensive team all of a sudden. They score the one offensive threat that you have to stop or it's going to be a long night is Isaac McNeely. He's been one of the best three-point shooters in the ACC for the last couple of years. You know he's getting the ball, and every team game plans to stop him from making threes. He's still making, I think, high, like I think 2.6 or 2.8, something like that per game. He's shooting over 40% for the second straight season. He's just an elite level shooter. He's going to get him up. Like I think he probably takes more than 10, even though Duke will gear a game plan around not giving him that many open looks from three. Otherwise, I mean, I said that about it not being Tony Bennett's Virginia. Their defense is not at the level that they have been under Tony Bennett.
Right.
It's ranked above 100 in KenPom, and they were top 5 in KenPom defensive efficiency in 7 of Tony Bennett's last 13 seasons. So throughout the first 2, because he was building the program, more than half of the last 13 seasons, they've been top 5 in the country in defensive efficiency. Like they've been, I mean, you probably could have guessed that because that's who Virginia was, and
right.
that's what they built the program on. But it's still mind-boggling to be that good and that consistent on that end of the floor. And so Duke should be able to score at a better clip than some of the other times they've gone up there. Even got the ACC championship game a couple years ago was what, 50-40.
Yeah,
that was a slugfest of a game that nobody enjoyed watching until the game was over and Duke fans could celebrate it.
Right. Now, when you look at this and thinking about, ways that Virginia wins a game like this, being at home, the crowd is obviously going to be really excited about this. The new AP poll is out. Duke stays at number 3. So it's the number 3 team in the country that you're going up against. You want the opportunity to knock them off. And if they can make 3-point shots and Duke kind of has an off night shooting there, that can be a big time difference. Because I'm just looking at the numbers here. Virginia has 5 different players that on the season are shooting 38% or better from 3-point range, with McNeely being at 42% on the year. I mean, that feels like the way that they can really get into this game.
Yeah, that's right there. And as good as Duke's defense was against Stanford, I think they still gave up 12 of 29. So it was one of Duke's worst 3-point defensive games. Now, I don't know what you can do when Maxime Reynaud, a 7-footer, is standing 28 feet from the bucket and he's going to rain a 3 on you. Like, you don't want to you don't want to pull Common Malawach all the way out there to him. Like if he's going to take those and make them, some part
good on him.
It's going to be good for you. Like,
yep,
that's a good shot. But yeah, Virginia can bang some threes. If I pull it up here, that's the number that I was looking for. They've made double-digit threes in 6 of the last 7 games and 3 straight. So typically, like, if you make double-digit threes, I think the percentages play out to where you probably have about a 60 to 70% chance of winning that game. With Duke, it's been higher because Duke's numbers are skewed way toward winning. But yeah, Virginia can make threes on you, and McNeely is the head of that. But Day-Day Ames can make threes. Andrew Rohde, who is probably the most unconventional point guard you'll see all season. He's a 6'6" guy that was playing the 3 last year for Virginia. He has 9 assists in each of the last 3 games. So, and he's a shooter. I think he's one of those guys over 38% that you mentioned.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, they've got weapons. They've got offensive pieces.
Yeah, one of the 5 guys not is TJ Power. So that is something certainly to kind of point out here, because that is going to be the one Duke connection in this game. He's playing 10 minutes a game. He started the first 5 games of the season for UVA and hasn't started since. He's played in 21 of their 25 contests, averaging 1.5 points per game and shooting 18% from 3-point range on the season, 6 of 32. TJ Power hasn't made a 3-pointer since early December. It has been a really tough go of it since he transferred to UVA. But Connor, that we're so focused on where these Duke guys go and what the next steps kind of look like for him. It's been a really tough go of it for Mr. Power.
Yeah, I feel bad for him because he was recruited there by Tony Bennett, and then Tony Bennett pulls the parachute about 3 weeks before their season opener. But he's just not had the impact that you thought he would have. I'm sure that Virginia thought he would have a bigger impact. Obviously, he was a starter at the beginning of the season. I think he hasn't played in the last 3 games. and Virginia has won all 3 of them. If that tells you kind of where he falls in the pecking order. He got passed by a freshman. I think his name is Jacob Kofi.
Mm-hmm.
I know the last name's Kofi. I'm not sure on the first name, but he passed him in the rotation in November. Just been a really rough season for TJ, and you're kind of curious if he's going to re-enter the portal and find somewhere closer to home or move down a level or what that's going to look like.
Yeah, so now you want him. I mean, will we see TJ Power tonight against Duke? That's a big question. It's certainly possible that he doesn't get on the floor at all. So we'll see how all of that plays out and so much more. Well, Conor, really do appreciate the time as always. I would definitely want people to go and check out Devils Illustrated and everything that you have going on over there at the website. How can they do that? What can they find when they go to your site?
Please pop on over. Duke.rivals.com. It's the busiest time of the year, honestly. Like, we're going to have basketball coverage right to the end of this thing, and then after the end of this thing, wherever that might be. So it's a great way to make yourself a smarter fan. That's my goal, to give you things to think about, to cover Duke the best that I can, and hope you guys check it out.
Awesome. Good to see you, Conor. We'll do this again soon, okay?
Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's Conor O'Neill joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, and that brings our show for today to a close. Again, Duke in action a little bit later tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. A fun lead-in as well, as the Duke women's basketball team plays Notre Dame, one of the top teams in the entire country, at 6 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. So back-to-back chances to watch some Duke basketball, the women, and then followed by the men's game as well. That'll do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.